It's time to bring out the BetterWorldian in all of us. Welcome to BetterWorldians Radio with your hosts, Ray, Mary Sue, and Gregory Hansel. BetterWorldians Radio inspires you with the people and ideas that are making the world a better place. You'll hear how small acts can make a big difference every day. Now, here are Ray, Mary Sue, and Gregory.
Hi, and welcome to BetterWorldians Radio. BetterWorldians Radio is a weekly broadcast whose mission is to uplift and inspire you to make the world a better place. I'm Greg Hansel, joined today by my co-host, Mary Sue Hansel. BetterWorldians Radio is brought to you by BetterWorldians Foundation and is co-hosted by the family team that created the popular social game on Facebook called A Better World. It rewards players for doing good deeds while helping to raise money and awareness for charities. To date, over 40 million good deeds have been done in A Better World by more than 4 million people in over 100 countries. This week on BetterWorldians Radio, we welcome Laura Weinbaum from Project Home, a Philadelphia-based nonprofit with the mission to break the cycle of homelessness and poverty. Laura is the Vice President for Public Affairs and Strategic Initiatives at Project Home. She's responsible for focusing organizational efforts and communicating with stakeholders to implement a $300 million multi-year effort to end and prevent chronic street homelessness. Laura has a BA from Columbia University and a Master's in Governmental Administration from the University of Pennsylvania. She is currently on the board of the Homeless Advocacy Project and an Adjunct Fellow at the Penn Center for Public Health Initiatives, among other community activities.
Hi, Laura. This is Mary Sue Hansel. Thanks for joining us today on BetterWorldians Radio.
Hi, Mary Sue and Greg. Thanks for having me.
Project Home was founded in 1989 by Sister Mary Scullion and Joan Dawson McConnon. Can you tell our listeners a bit about the early days of Project Home?
Sure. Project Home, one story that I really love about Project Home is really illustrative of how one small action can make a huge difference. Because here we are in 2016 with an organization that now has will soon have almost 1,000 units of supportive housing. And really the way it got started was Sister Mary Scullion and Joan Dawson McConnon were just two individual citizens who would often go into the city's subway concourses or other places that people who were homeless would sleep or stay. And the people who are homeless would often say to Mary when they would see her, "You've got to meet Joan." And when they would see Joan, they would say, "You've got to meet Mary." And they set up an opportunity for Mary and Joan to meet each other. And what I love about that is that, there's Mary and Joan, giving out their sandwiches or just talking to people about what they need and starting to form like the kernel of an idea. And then here's these people who themselves are experiencing homelessness are saying, what we really need is for you two to get together and for you to each bring the skills that you bring, and we'll support you and we'll work with you. And that's really the genesis of Project Home.
Boy, that's a great story. So they didn't know each other, and that's how they met. The homeless people introduced them, and then they founded the organization. Can you tell us a bit about what it looks like today? You mentioned 1,000 units of housing.
Sure. So I always talk about Project Home as, well, first I should say the HOME in Project Home stands for Housing, Opportunities for Employment, Medical Care, and Education, because we think that all of those are the things that people need in order to sort of build a stable life. That's things that many of us take for granted, right? A place to live, help for our medical needs when they arise, and a good education. Hopefully things that people in America can all take for granted. I always talk about us as doing that through 4 ways of delivering our service. One is we coordinate street outreach to people living on the streets throughout the city of Philadelphia. So there are 5 agencies that provide that street outreach, and we do it in collaboration with and funded by the city. But Project Home is kind of the hub at the center of that spokes. So we do street outreach. We do a really broad range of housing connected to various types of services for people who need them. So everything from a place where people can come in right off the street, currently engaged in active addiction or currently having various mental health situations, all the way to standalone apartments where people who meet the criteria for admission can come and live. So it's a very, very wide range from dormitory style to full apartments and everything in between. The third thing we do is support a neighborhood in North Central Philadelphia, kind of just west of Temple University for people who are familiar with Philadelphia. There we have our Stephen Klein Wellness Center, which is a federally qualified health center, and our Honickman Learning Center and Comcast Technology Labs, which is obviously, as it sounds, education focused with a bent towards technology for kids and adults in that community. We've also over time done a lot of community greening projects and home ownership development and things like that to really bring up that area, make sure that the folks in that neighborhood, which was at one time the greatest contributor to homelessness in Philadelphia, really people in those neighborhoods have the opportunities they deserve. And the last thing we do is education, advocacy, and public policy work to make sure that some of the conditions that have created the situation of homelessness can really be ameliorated. And we undertake all of our work in partnership with the people that we serve. So it really is, we talk a lot about the Project Home community and the importance of community in the work that we do, and that really does underpin everything.
It's such a wide range of services. When you hear the name Project Home, you normally just think of the housing, but I'm so glad that our listeners can hear all the wide scope of services that you do. Now, housing is obviously a huge piece of the puzzle for solving homelessness. Can you tell a bit about what you do in depth about the home? How does the housing work?
Sure. So one of the things that I think makes Project Home unique, and this is increasingly, I would say, the trend in homelessness in America in general, is that none of the housing that we provide has an artificial time limit on it. So there are different programs that are funded at the federal level, some of which say, you can stay for no more than 24 months, for instance, or emergency shelter, which has 1, 2, or 3 months kind of placement. So everything that Project Home does is permanent because we feel that everybody takes their own path in their own time. There's no way to say you must achieve sobriety in X number of days. It's just different people have different needs, and that's really been a fundamental underpinning of our work, is the dignity of every individual as an individual human. So that's to say that even within each of our residences, and they look very different. We have recovery housing where people come in with a commitment to recovery, but may still be using at the time that they enter, or may relapse while they're there, but we'll continue to work with them over and over and over again as long as they're willing to commit to the program and retain that commitment to sobriety. Then we have what we call safe havens, which are places where people who have a primary diagnosis of serious mental illness might come and stay. And often people move on from both of those residences fairly quickly to something that is more appropriate to a stabler living arrangement. And then we have residences where people live in rooms surrounding a common area, or we have, as I said, full apartments, efficiencies, one bedrooms.
Now, Laura, do they start out initially? Is it a free service, and then as they proceed, do they pay some amount, or how does that work?
So mostly the federal government, which provides some of the funding for our programs, requires that people pay 30% of their income, whatever their income is, in rent to us. Uh-huh. So that gets people used to the idea of paying rent. 30% is considered to be sort of the universal standard of what people should pay out of their paychecks for housing. So if people have only benefit income, we will connect people to benefits here. That's one of the services that we're able to provide. So if people have only benefit income, they pay 30% of that. If people have employment income, they pay 30% of that. If they lose a job, they're still only paying that 30% so that they can count on some, not too crazy fluctuations in what their budgets might look like.
So what else does Project Home do to help them improve their lives?
Oh, gosh.
I know there's probably a big, long answer there, but...
Right. I mean, I think the goal for all of us, like hopefully the goal for your listeners and everybody else, is really transformation. So whatever that means to you or me is the same thing as it might mean to somebody who comes in to live here. So we'll work with people to achieve whatever their goals are. Sometimes it's physical health stabilization. Sometimes it's mental or behavioral health stabilization. Sometimes it's family reunification. Sometimes it's employment. Like whatever is the goal that somebody aspires to achieve for him or herself is what we will try and support and work with. We do, as I say, work with connecting people to the broadest array of benefits that they're eligible for. We also have some social enterprises. We have a resale boutique. We have candle making and soap making workshops that residents and members of the community can participate in if they're not quite sure what is their right next step in employment. We have employment counselors who will work with people to connect to long-term jobs in the community. So really, depending on what a person's needs and goals and aspirations are, we're trying as hard as we can to work with each person to figure out what's the best path for him or her.
It sounds like a wonderful service. Now, how does the Project Home outreach work? You mentioned you have 5 agencies. These people that actually go out on the street and to try to talk to the people who are homeless?
Yep, that's exactly right. What we find is that, homelessness often results from long periods of gradual disconnection from people and from services and obviously from housing. So the idea is to try and reconnect people. And like we were talking about before, sometimes reconnecting can just it takes a long time. It takes different approaches. So we have 5 agencies: Horizon House, the Mental Health Association of Southeastern Pennsylvania, Hall Mercer, which is part of Pennsylvania Hospital, Self Incorporated, and us, who each has a slightly different expertise and a slightly different approach to their work. And so we will look across the spectrum at what might work the best for a given person on the street. We'll go out in hot weather with water. We'll go out in cold weather with socks or toiletries or different kinds of tools of engagement, but with the idea that the hope is that a person will be able to work with us to identify what are the services and housing needs that they're experiencing, and then our outreach workers will be able to connect them.
Laura, I'm really interested in your answer to this next question. We've heard it debated whether or not you should give homeless people on the street money when asked. What is your point of view on that? Very curious about that.
Yep, that's a great question, and certainly one we get all the time. The first thing I'll say is that typically people who panhandle are not homeless because in general, especially the sort of routine center city kind of panhandling that we all experience, people are able to collect enough money through that activity that they are able to rent a room or an apartment somewhere or contribute to a household's income. So generally, there's at least a little bit of a line between panhandling and homelessness. What we generally advise is that if people are feeling charitably inclined, we have in our office what we call where to turn. People can actually print them from their website if they're from our website if they're Philadelphians, and we ask that people give out where to turns or try and establish a relationship. Certainly, treat people with respect. Certainly, listeners can offer people to come into Project Home. In our lobby, we have outreach workers as well as out on the street. So there definitely are alternatives that we feel are more productive than just giving somebody cash on the street.
How about giving them food? Is that something that...
Food is often a really good engagement strategy, right? Like, what do you do with your family often? That's building your internal relationships is you sit down around a meal. So food can often be a really good engagement tool. It's a way to just, maybe there's a smile that happens as part of that interaction or kind of another way of helping somebody, just recognizing the humanity in somebody. So there's certainly, people should do whatever, obviously. People should engage with other humans in whatever way they feel comfortable with. It would be inappropriate for us to give guidance necessarily on that But if the question is, what do we think is the most successful for helping people exit homelessness, I think you're right that the connection of sharing food is an important connection. The connection of offering somebody connection to resources is an important connection. We have a 24-hour homeless outreach hotline that members of the public can call, or people who are experiencing homeless themselves can call to try and connect to a good resource.
We'll talk more about Project Home in just a moment, but right now I'd like to take a brief break and tell our listeners a bit about our game on Facebook called A Better World. A Better World encourages habits of goodness, positive mindsets, and giving to social causes to make a positive difference in the world. Players do things like express gratitude, share acts of kindness, send get-well notes to real-world sick children, and more. You can find out more at betterworld.com. So now let's get back to our conversation with Laura Weinbaum about Project Home, a Philadelphia-based nonprofit with a mission to break the cycle of homelessness and poverty. So, Laura, I saw you have some great special programs for teens. I saw a technology lab, some college prep, a summer camp. Can you tell us about some of those?
Sure. So those mostly take place through our Honickman Learning Center and Comcast Technology Labs, which, as you just basically summarized it beautifully. We have after-school programs that teens can participate in, and those also run the gamut. There are digital and visual arts opportunities, music opportunities, homework support, kind of you name it, soup to nuts academics, as well as extracurriculars that are offered at the Honickman Learning Center, which is on Judson Street. It's, again, just sort of west of Temple for folks who are coming from a Philadelphia standpoint. That program does also try and connect teens to summer entrepreneurship activities or summer employment, because that's been proven to be one of the things that will help kids stay in school and also achieve successful outcomes after school is over. We also connect teens to our college access program, which helps them identify a strategy for getting to and staying in college that looks appropriate for them, and some small amounts of scholarships and stipends to help support them financially if they should need it.
That's great. Do you see the kids really engaged in the programs?
Absolutely. Gosh, I don't actually know off the top of my head the number of kids who we've seen graduate from college, but anecdotally I can tell you we have at least 2 kids that I know of who came through that program over the last, I'll say, 10 years, interned within Project Home through their time either living here or living in the North Philly community, then went on to college. I can think of one now who's getting her master's in business administration. I can think of one who's getting her master's in social work. I can think of one who's employed here. So there's definitely really amazing success stories. I think we're on track to have about 100 kids either in or completing college in the last few years.
Good for you. That's excellent. So what do you believe is the most common misconception that people have about homelessness?
I think probably the single most common misconception is that people who are experiencing homelessness are in any way different from any of the rest of us. I often also like to talk about homelessness as a category that doesn't really exist, right? Like, we don't talk about people who are housed or people who are mortgage holders or, it's just the category of homelessness is really something that people tend to fall into when all of the other systems that are designed to support people fall apart. So it might be, in some cases, it might be the foster care system. In some cases, it might be the criminal justice system. In some cases, it might be the physical or behavioral health care systems. But all of these are designed to be part of a safety net that should catch people before they fall into homelessness. And often homelessness is just what results when other systems can't meet a person's needs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think unfortunately people have this misconception that if someone's homeless, it means they haven't expended any effort, they're lazy, they're not a hard worker, they have some sort of, they made some bad decisions. And maybe that's true, but I think in many cases just people that because of bad luck, because they've fallen through the cracks, that they've fallen through the holes in the system and in society and find themselves in a difficult situation.
I think that's right, and I think the other thing to keep in mind, Philadelphia has almost a 13% deep poverty rate, which means that there are about 200,000 people living in households where the income is $12,000 a year or less. So I don't know if you can imagine living on $12,000 a year. It's something I think about a lot, very heavily. But the fact that those folks who are living on $12,000 a year are not entering the homeless system is a tribute to their incredible resourcefulness and wherewithal. And so you do have to think about, just as a percentage of people living in poverty who don't have the resources to, again, connect back to those mainstream systems, some number of them will just experience homelessness over the course of a year just out of, bad luck.
Sure. No, that's a great point. So the holidays are here. I know we want to talk a bit about some of the special needs that Project Home has during these seasons. To talk about that, I want to bring in Annette Jeffrey, the VP of Development and Communications at Project Home. So can you tell us, what are some of the special projects you have during the holidays at Project Home?
Well, it's a wonderful time to get involved. As you can imagine, for a lot of folks in our community, the holidays have some memories of isolation and some loneliness, and that's one of the great things about being part of the Project Home community, is being able to be together. Mm-hmm. So there are a number of ways that people can get involved. Our website is a great resource for all of this information. There's a sort of how to get involved section with volunteer opportunities. Specifically during the holidays, we try to get together gifts for our residents to make the holidays extra special. And what we find residents love the most are a gift card, so they can go out and purchase something that they need or something fun. Mm-hmm. So we collect $30 gift cards, and this is something great to do in an office situation, to do a little holiday gift card drive. Mm-hmm. But we do $30 gift cards to CVS or Rite Aid, Walmart, Target, or Old Navy. And we're trying to gather those by December 19th.
That's great.
Another nice thing to do, would be to prepare a holiday treat or a meal. And we can arrange with our volunteer coordinator, whose information is on our website, to deliver the meal, serve the meal possibly. People could throw a little party in one of our residences. And another thing that is great is to do a holiday drive for other things. Besides gift cards are great, we also always need, especially during the winter months, hats and gloves, socks, scarves, new blankets, pillows, sheets, towels, those kinds of things. Sure. We love to have a welcome kit available for someone when they're moving in. So new blankets and sheets are a great thing. Another cool thing during the holidays, that this is year-round, but there's some special products that are produced by our residents. I believe Laura mentioned that earlier. We have our homemade line, candles and other products, cards. And all of that is available on our website as well. And we just started a store on Etsy. Huh. So those products can be purchased to give out as gifts, which is a great support.
Well, those are great projects for the holidays. If folks wanted to help out with gift cards or with preparing a meal, should they get in touch with you through the website, or what's the best way to help with those projects?
Yeah, the very best way is our website. Elle Gordon is our volunteer coordinator, and all of her contact information is right there on the website. Perfect.
Thank you so much, Annette.
Thank you so much.
So, Laura, tell us how our listeners can help support Project Home.
So I think there's what we always say is donate, advocate, and volunteer, right? So clearly donations are a really big part of our existence. Less than half of our revenue comes from any sort of government source. So it's donors of all sizes are incredibly, incredibly crucial to our work. Volunteer, I think Annette just covered, but if people go to our website, there's a section called How to Help, and you'll find our volunteer link right there. During the holiday time, it might be running a holiday drive or providing a holiday meal or gift cards or other things like that. Additionally, obviously, shopping at our online store in our businesses. And then the last is advocate. And that is something that we do all the time as a really core component of Project Home's mission. When you go to our website, most often there will be some sort of an online action that people can take. Sometimes they're limited to Philadelphia voters, but they very often are much more broad. We'll probably be running one. We're running one right now that is just sort of calling on a federal government as this new administration takes shape that is thinking about mercy and justice and how we can create public policies that reflect the values of kindness and generosity that hopefully many Americans share. So donate, advocate, and volunteer are, I think, the biggest ways that people can help.
That's great. So I was really struck by your powerful slogan, which was, "None of us are home until all of us are home." What does that mean to you, and why do you believe that's true?
I think a lot of the time here at Project Home, we talk about the power of transformational relationships. And there's an Aboriginal artist who we use this quote a lot. It says, "If you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." And I think that's kind of a longer way of sort of saying none of us are home until all of us are home. That we really do believe in the power and crucial importance of community, and that if you're going to be in a community, that means when one part is hurting, the whole thing is hurting. And that's why none of us are home until all of us are home has been a really important vision statement for us.
Definitely. So I have one last question for you. It's a question I ask almost every week to all our guests. In this case, how do you believe Project Home is helping to make the world a better place?
I've been here a long time, and I often think to these stories when I think about things like that, right? So there was a woman who I used to see before I worked here. I would see her on the bus almost every day on my way to work, and she was miserable. You could just see from the way she carried herself how unhappy she was. She would wear ripped clothing and often have no shoes. And as I came here to work at Project Home later, I got to know this person who was engaging with outreach, and then eventually she moved into the building where I work, and she would cook the most amazing meals, and I would always have the wonderful smell of her cooking in my hallway. And ultimately, actually one day, I ran into her, not even knowing, where had she gone over this time. I ran into her. She was behind a cash register at the Rite Aid, and she was just telling me how happy she is that now she has her own apartment, and she was living with her boyfriend, and she has this great job. And it was so amazing to see this transformation from, also my own transformation in that same time in terms of going from, working really in the technology field into working here at Project Home, that stories like those are definitely what sort of keep coming back and what prove to me how we're helping to make the world a better place.
You can learn more about Project Home by going to projecthome.org. Laura, thank you for everything you do at Project Home and for joining us today on BetterWorldians Radio.
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity.
It's our pleasure. BetterWorldians Radio is brought to you by BetterWorldians Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit whose mission is to make the world a better place by encouraging the very best in everyone. We believe it's as important to plant flowers as it is to pull weeds. We focus on positive thinking, positive values, and positive actions. In short, our vision is to bring out the better worldian in everybody so that we can all make it a better world. But we can't do it without your help. Donations support our BetterWorldians Radio podcast, as well as go toward developing new features like articles, videos, blogs, and more. Go to BetterWorldians.com to be a part of this important mission. And until next time, please be a better worldian.